Hello everybody. Happy Friday night. Welcome to my Zen Den. I am so happy that you could join me tonight. My name is Mandy Van Havermit and I am an independent demonstrator from Grey Eagle, Minnesota. And tonight I am going to show you a fun fold card using the Countryside dies from the annual catalog. I'm actually going to do two cards. One of them is going to be a fun fold. One of them is not going to be a fun fold, but it's going to be another way. I'm going to kind of show you how to use that stamp a little bit. So I kind of wanted to share that with you because the stamp, when I got this bundle, I was not expecting it to be one big background stamp. I was kind of surprised by that. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. It took me a little bit. So I'm going to share with you how to use that big background stamp also. So let's flip the camera around and get stamping. Hold on one second. All right. And I have something to share with you. Oh, look at that. That is the new September to December mini catalog. I cannot show you the inside, but I can show you the cover. I can show you the back. It's very pretty. Some things to come. Those should be hitting your mailboxes, like customers' mailboxes. Gosh, I would think by the end of the month because it starts in September. So if you are a customer of mine who's put in an order within the last year or so, one of these should be coming to you soon. So watch your mailboxes. I'm excited for that to happen. If they already hit your mailboxes, let me know. I would be very surprised if I didn't know that, but weirder things have happened. Okay, so Countryside Corners. This is the stamp set, okay? So it is, like I said, it is just one big background stamp, but there are like, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dies to the set. So I thought, well, this is really odd. So I will show you how to use the two together also tonight. But first I am going to show you a fun fold card. I'll share that fun fold with you right now. This is the card we're going to be making, and it's a fun fold because it opens up there. So not the whole entire card opens up. So we're going to use one of these dies to make that card. So let's get into it. Here is our supply list of what we're going to be needing. I'm going to be using Calypso Coral ink. The designer series paper I'm using for both cards is Inked Botanicals 6x6. Super fun colors, super fun designs. Calypso Coral, Crushed Curry, Lost Lagoon, Petal Pink, and Pool Party. So very fun designer series paper. So what you're going to need... sorry, I had two stamp sets there and I don't need to. Anyhow, what you're going to need is a 5.5 by 4 1/4 Lost Lagoon. You're going to need a Petal Pink that is 5 1/4 by 4. You're going to need one piece of designer series paper that is 6 by 4 3/4, and then you're going to need a scrap of Petal Pink. Okay, so we're going to start out with the piece of designer series paper. And if what you're using is directional, you're going to have to be mindful of that, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second biggest die, this die, and I'm actually going to cut that shape out. So my shape is going to be sandwiched this way. So I'm going to score on the 6-inch side. I'm going to score at 3 inches and then fold that. Okay, so I can set that aside. Let's burnish that so it's nice and flat. So now I'm going to take this die, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up, but I'm not going to be over the edge. So when I flip this over, you're going to see the cutting edge of this die, that one long straight edge, is not going to cut the paper. I'm going to line it right up to that cutting edge, but I'm not going to cut that edge. I hope that makes sense to you. So I am going to line it right up there, grab a piece of washi tape or a Post-it note. Sorry, I made one right before I went live, and my washi tape bit the dust. There we go. So I need a new piece. Washi tape, Post-it note tape, Post-it notes, whatever strikes your fancy. This is really old washi tape and it is like disintegrating, but it's super sticky. Let me tell you, I'm going to actually put it on my pants to get some of that sticky off so it doesn't wreck my paper. Who says lint is a bad thing? Okay, so we're going to tape that right down so it doesn't wiggle, okay? And then I just would double check to make sure that that cutting edge is indeed not going to cut your paper. We're gonna bring out our cut and emboss machine, regular sandwich. These dies are a little weird because they have lots of flat edges, so I would just make sure you put that pointed edge going through first. That way your cut and emboss machine doesn't make that big clunk clunk sound as it goes through. So, do you like my imitation of a clunking cut and emboss machine? I've got so many talents. Okay, so let's take this off. Oh, I ripped that spot. Don't rip the good spot. I don't care if you rip the scrap. That came out wrong, and it was not supposed to come out that way. If you caught that, it was supposed to be scrap, and it didn't rip. It did rip the scrap. It didn't rip the good part. Okay. Whew. My Friday night is already starting out tough. Okay, so let's set this aside for 1 second. I'm going to put this back just so I don't lose it. So I've got that one. This piece here, my piece of 5 1/4 by 4 petal pink, I'm going to cut the inside out of the inside of this card out of this, and that's why I chose petal pink, because it's lighter. So I'm going to simply center that in my in this piece of paper because I'm going to hide it. So we're going to bring back our cut and emboss machine, our plates. And I don't feel like I need to tape this because it's not that scientific. See, this is going to cover up my hole I'm making. So, run that through the cut and emboss machine. Do you want to see what I did? I wrote cut on it so I wouldn't forget. Because I do that. All right. So, one more cut that I'm going to need to do, but first I'm going to stamp. So I've got my scrap of petal pink. I'm going to bring in my Calypso Coral ink pad, and I'm using Kindest Expressions stamp set. I'm just going to go with the With Sympathy. I'm in need of some sympathy cards, so I'll find some sentiments to go on the inside, but right now I'm just going to do the With Sympathy on the outside. So stamp that. I love the look of Calypso Coral on petal pink. I think it is such a pretty combination. Okay, so one last time through the cut and emboss machine, I am going to take the next smallest die and just make sure that it's straight, which is easier for me to do when I'm looking straight at it. Go figure. This time I am going to tape it down just because I don't want it to wiggle, and send it through. All right. Well, that piece is gone. Peel that off gently. That is some ridiculously sticky washi. Okay, so put that back so I don't lose it. Okay, let's assemble our card. So we've got our pieces here. Very simple to do. I am going to grab my adhesive. Use your adhesive of choice. I like my Stamp and Seal. And I'm going to center that right on top, that petal pink with the hole in the middle, right over that Lost Lagoon. I'm going to take this piece now and be, like I said, be mindful that if it is directional paper, I just don't want it to come loose. If it is directional paper, you want it to be the correct direction, right? So there's that. I'm going to find an eraser and erase my little cut word. Nobody has to know that I need notes for reminders. This is going to go on the inside. Isn't that pretty? This is a great way to show off the both patterns of paper, both sides of paper also. I love it when I can find a way to show off both sides of designer series paper, because there's generally not a bad side. So beautiful. All right, and so now this, I'm going to put a little tag on this because it is easier to open when there's a little tag. So I've got, this is the bordered ribbon. It's 1/4 inch thick. This color is Lost Lagoon. I believe it might actually be part of this suite, but I'm not sure 100%. Think my paper snips will do it? It did. Spoke too soon. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to put just a little bit, I'm going to put it off on the bottom of this corner here. So I'm going to put just a little bit of adhesive right down there on the bottom. Just kind of make that flag go right off the corner there. It's kind of cute, right? All right, let's find some dimensionals. And I tend to go kind of heavy around that flag that I put there because it pulls that corner a little bit more. So so then we're just going to center that on that card. Aren't those colors just beautiful together? I love them so much. All right, one last little thing. I'm going to put a brushed brass butterfly right there because it looks perfect. So now you've got your card that opens up. That is card number 1. And I've got a couple samples also of just some other cards I've made like that. This one here, this was actually this is the card that started it all. I liked the way that this looked. I used the designer series paper. This has lots of layers. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 different layers on top. So you can build this up a lot. Started with the wild wheat, copper clay, bubble bath, some more wild wheat, and then some very vanilla. So super cute. And then this one I made tonight, great kids card, kids birthday card. Super fun, super simple. I really like that layout. So on to the next card, and we're going to be using that stamp on this card. So let's do it. All right, so this is the card that we're going to be making this time. I'm going to be using crushed curry and Calypso Coral ink. For my card stock, I'm going to be using a piece of, my goodness, I've got it all piled up on me here. I'm going to be using Very Vanilla, 8.5 by 5.5, scored down the middle at 4 1/4, so just a basic card. I got a piece of Calypso Coral 4 by 5 1/4. I've got a piece of designer series paper. Basically, it just needs to be 2 3/4 inches wide by at least 4 1/4 inches long. And then another piece, this happens to be the exact opposite side, at least 2 by 3.5 of designer series paper. And then a scrap, a decent sized scrap of Very Vanilla. And I will show you what we're going to do with that. So let's get into it. Let's start doing some cutting. First things first, before we cut, I am going to take my piece of Calypso Coral, and I'm going to use my Cane Weave 3D embossing folder. Thought it just needed a little extra in the background, and I like the way that this cane weave looked with the paper. So, because it's a 3D embossing folder, we're going to follow the directions on our big main plate, and with 3D embossing folders, we're just going to use plate 1 and plate 4. So, plate 1, the embossing folder with the cardstock inside, plate 4. Run it through the cut and emboss machine. And I'm not sure if you guys know when I keep saying 3D embossing folders, they actually, when you get the package, it actually says 3D on it. A 3D embossing folder is way thicker than a standard embossing folder. I'm just going to see if I can find, here's a standard embossing folder. The distress tile. No, that's not it. They're way thinner. Usually they're the smaller ones. Here we go. Pretty Flowers. Pretty Flowers is not a 3D embossing folder. It's way thinner. You can see there. This is Pretty Flowers. This is a 3D. So this is a standard. This is a 3D. That's the difference when I say that. So when you're embossing, follow the instructions on your plate. If you're using a standard embossing folder, you're going to use the two #1 plates, your cutting plates. If you're using a 3D embossing folder, you're going to use the gray 3D embossing plate. So there is a little lesson in embossing. Moving on. Okay, let's do some cutting. Let's do some stamping first. I'm going to bring in this big stamp, okay? So what I'm going to do is ink up. I'm only really going to be using this inside piece, but I've got to ink up a little bit of it. If I had a Stampin' spot, I would maybe be able to ink up less, but there's no harm in inking up a little bit more. And I'm going to put my Very Vanilla scrap right on there, and then I'm going to take just I like to use a block and just press it down to make sure I get it all. And there we go. So I don't care that this didn't get stamped nicely because I'm only worried about the center of that. Okay? So now I'm going to, since I'm stamping, I'm going to open up my Calypso Coral. I'm using a sentiment, the Sentiment Grateful from the Cottage Wreaths set. And I'm just going to tap, 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 and then, sorry if you see the back of my head, Grateful right in there, like that. So now, set all those aside. I'm going to grab out of my embossing, or my cutting, my dies, I'm going to grab the smallest rectangle, and I'll line that up, and I'll be able to cut out just that part, okay? Remember on this card how I've got the dotted line around that? What I had done is I stamped my bubble bath. I think I actually used the copper clay, either copper clay or, I'm pretty sure that's copper clay. I stamped all of that on there, and then I took this one here and cut around it. So I cut off all that extra stuff around it. So that's how you use this big stamp. Each one of these dies correlate with one layer of this. You can probably use these, like for instance, use these two together, but it's kind of tricky to line up and get just that border. But it is possible to use this one, sorry, I don't put my thing on there. Get that layer, and then cut another layer with this size and cover it up. Does that make sense? It takes some playing around with it, but it does work really, really neat. It's a fun set. So, all right, so where is that piece of washi tape that here? Just has to stick a little bit. It can look like it's been through a few times, because it has been through a few times. All right, so we're going to do that one. And if you can get more than one on your plates at one time, go for it. So we're going to take that, and I will take this die and put that right on there. So just make sure your paper is big enough that it can get all of it. All right, so I've got two. Throw it through the cut and emboss. All right, so I've got that one. Now I've got I think I'm throwing this washi tape out after today. Just saying. Okay, so I've got that one. It is like crumbling. I don't like it. We'll worry about that later. Okay, now I'm going to take this die, the next bigger size, and my last piece of designer series paper, and send that through. Lots of cutting, but the cutting is pretty simple. You're not messing around with trying to get little pieces out and things like that. So it's a nice die set, even for somebody like me who is not exactly got a lot of patience when it comes to this stuff. Okay, so let's put our card together. I'm going to take my card base, fold and burnish it. Uh-oh, Dad's in the house. I hear noises upstairs. Ah, this is the ribbon I'm looking for. This ribbon, is this not the coolest ribbon in the world? I love it. Number one, it's natural twine, and that makes me happy. But we're going to use this on our card. The number two, it's got the coolest, like bubble weaving texture. It's so cool. Love it. So we're going to assemble and then put it on here because I'm going to wrap it around here. So stick this. Whew, I was panicking. I was like, oh no, I'm putting it on the wrong side. No, I'm not. I'm not putting it on the wrong side. It's okay, everybody. It's okay. Because I've never ever put adhesive on the wrong side before. That doesn't happen all the time. Okay, so we're going to snip this a little wider. And then what I'm going to do is roughly where I want that to go, where I want it to lay. So I want it roughly right there. I'm going to hold it, turn it over, put my adhesive there, put my adhesive there, flip it back over, line it up roughly where, or like line it up where I want it, not roughly where I want it, where I do want it, which is right there. And then just fold it over and pull it fairly snug, but not too snug that you're going to warp your paper, and tap it over on the other side too. So now you've got it pressed down on the back, and it should stay where you're at, where you want it. So let's put some more adhesive on here. When you use a 3D embossing folder on cardstock, be liberal with your adhesive. It tends to roll. It really breaks down the paper fibers, and it really tends to roll. So make sure you're using enough adhesive so that it just kind of bubbles up. Use enough adhesive that it sticks down, and it adds so much to your card. All right, isn't that pretty? Oh, I love it. Some dimensionals. I'm going to put 3. I'm putting 1 up on top, 2 on the bottom, just to kind of keep everything right in place. And I'm kind of not centering it. I'm putting it off a little bit. Right, like that. And then I'm going to bring in those brushed brass butterflies one more time. And I'm going to put one of those little guys right there, because I think it's pretty. All right, so there is my second card. Beautiful little thank you card. And I'm going to show you, this is, this card was inspired actually by this card. I'm not sure who made this card, so I'm sorry, I can't give you credit. I got it from a swap, but the tag fell out. I don't have who did it, but they used the Countryside. This is actually the paper, the designer series paper that comes with the suite. It's the nice blues. It's got the boho blue and the Misty Moonlight and some Night of Navy in there and white. It's such a pretty paper. Let's see, what's the other one? Balmy Blue. Such a pretty paper, paper pack. So that is the card that inspired that. So let's pull in my other card. those are my 2 cards for tonight. So I hope you liked those. I'm going to flip the camera around. I love that embossing folder, LeVar. It is such a pretty embossing folder. And it goes with a lot of stuff. You can make it masculine or feminine, which is like, that's something like a universal thing. Item that you can use for masculine or feminine. I just like that. So a couple of notes for you. If you are interested in some classes, I've got classes that I'll be starting up here. I kind of take the summers off from having in-person classes, but I will be starting them up again in September. So check out my my Stampin' Up page. That will, and I will link that in the YouTube video, and I will put a link to that on my Facebook page so that you can check those out. I've sent some letters out to some local girls, but if you are interested at all, I would love to have you come to an event and meet you. So otherwise, I will see you next Friday night. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.